So I really hope I didn't mess my hives up. So this all started around mid-February when I started seeing bees around our property.
Let's go check on some hives.
So first at the butterfly hive, there really wasn't any activity. And then the sun and moon hive, I knew that the chances of them failing were pretty much 100%, and I didn't see any activity at that hive. And I also didn't see any activity at the umbrella hive, which makes sense because I looked at the weather and the highs around this time were in the 50s. But then I got to the vegetable hive and they have been really active. And then I came out here to the freedom hive and they were really active as well. This led me to wonder, should I get into my hives before the spring inspection? So I went on to the Layens Treatment Free Facebook group, which is a huge resource for anybody who's wanting to do natural beekeeping, especially in Layens hives. And I asked that question and I got lots of great answers, but it kind of stirred this feeling of angst, like, oh no, I keep hearing that spring is coming early this year. I need to get into my hives. And it was around this time that I was reviewing Monty, the Suburban Sodbuster's videos on how to do splits for hives to multiply your apiary. So I got kind of anxious to get into the hives to make sure that they weren't producing drones and about to swarm. And this weather was nice, and so we're anticipating an early spring. But I think I made 3 moderate mistakes along the way that I hope you can learn from. So a week went by and I was ready to get into the hive. It took me a lot longer than I expected to be able to get the lid off, but the bees were doing a great job propylizing it, so I wiggled and wiggled and wiggled it and finally popped it off. So when I lifted up the pillowcase, there were a few dead bees, which was to be expected, but taking a look inside, my daughter thought that she saw the queen on the divider board, so she looked for a minute but didn't see it. But it was so exciting to get back into the hives and see those thousands of bees covering those frames. And we went back through, but oh, right there, that's where I made my first big mistake. As I was getting into the hives, I thought, well, I'm already in here, I'm already disrupting the bees, I'll go ahead and get ready for splits. So I started moving all of the frames to the middle of the 20-frame hives. And I'm going to talk more about it later, but I realized later that I shouldn't have been preparing for splits quite yet. So we kept looking through the frames. The 3 main things I was looking for were brood, which would tell me that the queen is there and laying, honey to make sure that they had some stores left to get through the rest of winter, and drones. That's what I kept seeing on the Layens Facebook group, is that if I'm seeing drones, it's going to mean that they're going to be swarming soon, which again may happen 3 weeks earlier than normal this year. So with my faithful helper, my daughter, we ended up finishing the freedom hive, and here, the last step was to open up the middle door and seal up the far left one. And then when I was working on this hive, I didn't even think about it, but I took the wool pillow out and didn't put it back in. So that was my second mistake. Next up was the rainbow hive. Here we had to pause for a moment, which happens every time I inspect the beehives, which was to get the smoker going again. Telling me I'm not the only one who has to relight the smoker a million times. We finally got it going, and this time again I moved the frames to the middle to prepare them to split, which is something I love about the 20-frame insulated hives. It makes it so simple. In this hive, we did spot the queen, which was really exciting. I just love whenever I get to see her. So we put the pillow back in the middle. We had 2 divider boards on both sides, and we closed that one up. But I couldn't remember later if I had done that or not. Next, it was time to get into the butterfly hive. So in this hive, again, just like with the other hives, there was a good amount of honey, I think, and there weren't any drones. We saw at least some brood. The one thing that kind of puzzled me from this hive was this white stuff in the cells. I was really hoping that it wasn't like chewed up larva from some insect that was in there. I'm not actually sure what that is. I looked online and I thought that I read that maybe that was just some pollen. Tell me in the comments, what is that? And then my third mistake was I didn't have enough divider boards to even prepare for the splits like I thought that I had. So I ended up just putting the pillow up against the frame and closing it up. And then the last hive that I checked was the sun and moon hive. I was not expecting it to be alive. It was not. The bees were dead, clustered onto the frames. This was a hive that I had moved from underneath the bridge before winter. This was like October, November. I thought that I was going to give them a better chance of survival by putting them in a hive. So I still think I did the right thing. It was still a good learning opportunity. And then back in mid-February, I did not check the vegetable hive, mainly because I didn't want to break the propolis seals and I didn't really have anywhere for them to go. I actually thought about transferring them to this hive that I had brought over here, and I waited for a little while and I checked with the Layens group and they said no, that's too big of a change. Most people said no, don't do that so early in the season, so I didn't. So just like in the Freedom Hive, in both the butterfly hives and the rainbow hives, I saw at least some brood, no drones, and some honey stores. Yay! And then I watched Monty's video again about splitting hives and I realized, oh no, he did this in April. It's only mid-February. And even though we had some really nice weather in the middle of the month into the 60s, like high 60s, even 70s, I realized, oh man, we're still gonna get some lows into the 20s later on this month still. So I went back to my notes from Dr. Leo from last March in Kabul, and then I also looked over his handouts that he gave from Fedor Lazutin, and I saw that in there he recommends, for him in Russia, May to June is when a lot of the swarms happen. Hi Bella, how are you? This little sweetie's been following me around all day. Hi Bella, you're so sweet. Thanks for hanging out with me. So he says that late May to June is when swarms often happen, but that's in Russia, I believe. So I think it's pretty safe to say that we could bump that up maybe a month or two here, because I think Dr. Leo has said that swarming normally happens starting in March-ish here in the Missouri Ozarks. And then I went back to my Keeping Bees in Horizontal Hives by the Layens to review how to do splits, and I just realized, oh no, I probably did this way too soon. So I realized that the big thing I needed to do was cut more divider boards and get the pillow off of the frame so that the honey doesn't start sticking to it and the bees don't start building comb on it. And now Pixie's coming to say hi. I just get all sorts of love today. Aww, sweet kitties. So 1 week later, I was able to rectify 2 of those mistakes, hopefully. Okay, don't have very long before my next class. And I'm really hoping to get the divider board cut today and put into the hives along with the pillow, because it's gonna be beautiful today and tomorrow, but it's supposed to get colder again later this week. I really want to get that divider board back in there. I was just watching another video today by Monty, the Suburban Sodbuster, as he gave an update on his hives. And he mentioned that most hives fail, if they're gonna fail, they do in March, like right at the end of winter. So even though all 4 of my colonies are alive now, I really want to keep them that way, if at all possible. We have a table saw, but it's folded up and totally enclosed. Very hard to get to, unfortunately. So I am going to use just a circular saw to cut my plywood, which is not ideal because, you know, you've seen my other videos maybe of me making the hives and making other things, and precision is not my strong suit. Hi, Pixie. This is the plywood I'm going to be using. It's not 3/4 like Dr. Leo recommends, but it's got to be better than nothing. And I got my plans pulled up from Dr. Leo's website. Thankfully, this is a very simple thing. Okay, my very kind husband cut these boards for me while I was finishing up my classes. They're a hair thinner than they're supposed to be because that's just the board size that I had. But I've got the pillow. I'm going to head to the Freedom Hive and get ready for the rest of winter. And to my surprise, the lid was still very hard to get off. I was able to put the pillow back in. And in the butterfly hive, I was able to remove the pillowcase and put in a divider board and then put the pillowcase back on top. I couldn't remember if I had done things correctly with the rainbow hive, so I just went ahead and checked it, and it was fine. It had 2 divider boards on both sides. The pillow was still on top, so I just closed that back up. Okay, well, I hope you enjoyed this spring saga for my apiary. I hope that I averted crisis by making sure that all of the hives are ready for the rest of winter. Hello, chickens. So I'll check back to let you know how things are going this year. Thanks for following along. Bye.